Hi guys, welcome back aboard our 44-foot hurricane damaged DIY catamaran project boat. The last 9 months of digging into this big hunk of fiberglass has been a fun rickety ride, but in the next couple of weeks we want to put this boat back in the water. But for us to do that, there is a bunch of tasks on our to-do list. This week's video is sponsored by Surfshark. More about them a little bit later. In last week's video, we introduced you guys to this board here. This is every single task we need to accomplish before we can put the boat back in the water. We're not gonna go through each of these in a lot of detail. It's mainly so we don't forget anything and a good visual representation for you guys of what has been done. Let's start with a bit of cleanup inside of the boat and then move on to somewhere to sleep. Last week we had a visit from a surveyor. We need a survey done on the boat so we can get liability insurance for moving it. The surveyor told us to please
get rid of the stove and cooktop. Well,
Yes.
At least make it clear that we're not going to be using them.
that we won't have any propane on the boat.
Yes. So we're just going to rip it all out.
This is the cooktop and over here is the oven. Complete with what appears to be a very well used pizza stone.
You just gotta get angry at it and just
Loose or...
here. Want me to try and lift and you?
Okay, let me get the... Here we go. Get your fingies out of there.
Aha!
It would appear we have killed a Harbor Freight bucket. Sad, sad day.
That was my bucket. That was my cleaning bucket.
No more cleaning. The oven is gone. Next up, the cooktop.
Oh shit! Okay.
Well, it's
Well,
coming
I'm
apart one piece at a
figuring it
time. Snookums, here you go. Nice. Okay, well, let's see how Ava's aim is compared to mine.
So we're aiming for the bucket?
Not really. Nice. And just like that, that's the last bit of propane remnants gone from the boat.
Apparently we are in the mood for demolition today and we're about to tear out the settee table right now.
Yes, because we've figured out that this is where we want to sleep when we're bringing the catamaran to North Carolina.
There aren't a lot of options of places to sleep for the trip north. The aft cabin is covered in mold. The aft port cabin is covered in mold. The aft starboard cabin is
Covered in fiberglass.
exactly. I thought maybe it was going to be a possibility, but I went to go clean down there today and
No.
It's not. Then we were thinking about making some kind of bed out of plywood here, but we just don't think there's enough space. Definitely not for Mads because he's so long.
And all of this mess, that's Ava's fault. Like, that's,
Wow.
It was nice and tidy until she got here. Now it's just
Actually,
complete mayhem.
This was tidy 2 days ago.
So step one is going to be to get the table out of here because it doesn't lower low enough that we can put a piece of plywood over all of this to have a nice big bed. So table's gotta go. Snapped. This thing is not gonna come out nice, so it's gonna have to come out brutally.
So far, so good. We are finally ready to start this week's tasks, and we think we're about 95% ready to get the boat in the water next week. And we've kind of been holding off on starting to plan that process of how to get the boat to and into the water, but we are finally ready to start planning that. But first, it looks like we're getting a visit from our friendly neighborhood shark, the surf shark. This week's video is sponsored by Surfshark. Surfshark is a virtual private network. What is that? Well, it's a way to virtually put your computer in another country, and it's also a great way to protect your computer when you're on a public Wi-Fi. There are tons of reasons why you can use a VPN. As you know, I've been helping my sister out in London with my niece for a few months, and we use Surfshark daily directly on our Apple TV to get my nieces and our favorite TV shows that aren't available in London. Depending on what country you travel to, some TV shows might not be available, or the entire platform might not be available. For instance, like Max in the UK. And if you have a young kid at home, you know getting that morning TV show is crucial. Surfshark is fantastic for getting your favorite TV shows, but it's also good for more serious matters. For instance, when we were cruising in Europe and I had to help my parents with some health insurance paperwork. That website, like many other government and healthcare websites, was only available in the US. And the only way that we could help my parents was to use Surfshark to virtually put my computer in the US. Go to surfshark.com/saillife or use code SAILLIFE at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring this video.
With the table removed, I could start building the frame for our temporary bed. With the help of our friend Dave, I'd gotten my hands on some 2x4s and we'd found some slats on Facebook Marketplace for $20. While we can't use this frame on the boat long term, I figured we might be able to reuse the frame and the mattress if we manage to find property for our workshop with living accommodations built in North Carolina. I must stress, this is definitely not fine woodworking, but it will do, and also very importantly, it'll do so without anybody getting splinters in their butts getting in and out of bed. We could of course have used plywood instead of the slats, but it would have been way more expensive, and with the slats the mattress will have a much easier time breathing. Like I said, this is definitely not fine woodworking, but it'll do very nicely for our trip north. I think our bed frame is looking very promising. We've also picked up a mattress, a queen size mattress that's like 10 inches thick, so we're gonna be sleeping like babies. But Ava's made me promise that I won't take this thing out of the box before we're done with all the work. That means we can move the bed into done. We have ordered the freezer. I am just about to start installing the new head. We've also bought a shower solution. It's not exactly going to be a life of luxury. We ordered this electric pump you put in a bucket, and there's a shower head, and that's it. The very first thing I did this morning while it was still nice and cool was to fix our hole under the keel. So just grind out a little bit of laminate, lay up some new laminate. So that hole is gone. And while we're busy updating the board here, let's put the chain and anchor into doing. That has all been ordered. It's on its way here. Fenders have been ordered. Ava is going to be sorting the mooring lines today, or the lines we found on the boat that we can use as mooring lines. We're making really good progress and we should be able to finish almost all of these this week. But let's get started on the head. This is our forever head for the catamaran. It is not just for the trip to North Carolina. It's the exact same model we have aboard Athena, and it's been nothing short of amazing. We've not had a single issue with it in 4 years of full-time use. After having liberated our new throne from the box within a box, it turned out it had survived the shipping adventure without any damage. As far as how we're orienting the head, we might tweak that a little bit when we start putting the head together again. But for now, this is where it's gonna go. I noticed immediately that the brackets for securing the head had changed from the older version we have aboard Athena. This will be interesting. First thing first though, we have this little bit of hose left over. It's not the type of hose you should use if you want to have a smell-free boat long term, but for the short trip north, this won't have time to start smelling. The old hose runs behind the molded shower module and is not accessible. The easiest way to run the new hose is to secure it to the old hose and pull it through. By using a barbed connector and a couple of screws, there's nothing the hose can get hung up on when we pull it through. For the control panel for our drone, we're going with the dumb option, at least compared to the Bluetooth-enabled controller we have aboard Athena. These switches are really nice and tactile compared to the domed buttons aboard Athena that can sometimes be a little bit annoying to use. Speaking of annoying, I don't know how I feel about these new mounting brackets. The first stumbling block was the fact that no installation manual was included, so I struggled to figure out how these were actually intended to be used. It turns out there's a QR code you need to scan to download the manual. Oddly enough, every other part of the head came with a manual, including the lid. With the manual in hand, everything made a lot more sense and the installation was pretty straightforward, although it would have been nice if there was a one-to-one installation template included for drilling the holes. My main concern with the new brackets is how long they're going to last, as in how many times can I remove and reinstall the head before the soft plastic strips out. You'll see what I mean in a few seconds. With the brackets installed, I fed the hose through and ran the wires up to where we'll be installing the controls. After having connected the hose to the back of the head, it was time to secure the head to the brackets. It's done with screws that go directly into the soft plastic. To me, and I might very well be wrong here, it seems like it would be easy to over-tighten these, and it also seems like there's a finite amount of times you can screw and unscrew before the plastic lets out the magic smoke. One change we're thinking about making is to build a bigger holding tank. Normally there is a genset installed on top of the holding tank, limiting the size of the tank, but we don't plan on installing a genset, so we could easily fit a bigger holding tank.
And just like that, we have a head fully hooked up, fully plumbed. There is going to be one little tweak for us to be able to use this on the way to North Carolina. We won't have pressurized water, so 2 of the 3 buttons here on the panel won't do anything. We're going to have to manually add water and then use the flush button. Let's take this thing for a spin with just some clean water. So let's pretend pee here. That was a big pee.
Wow, that was a huge pee.
And first ever flush in 3, 2, 1. What I think my mic didn't pick up was the fact that I could hear that water splashing in the holding tank, which is just right behind the camera. So we'll check for leaks, and if there are no leaks, then that is the head installation done. Oh yeah, and this big, beautiful black container here, that is going to be our makeshift solar shower. We'll have one of these each, and we can keep those out in the cockpit. That'll heat the water from the sun, and then at night we can shower. I'm going to use way less than one of these. We'll see how much Ava uses.
One of the tasks on our to-do list before we leave is to get some mooring lines, and we actually found some lines in the forwardmost locker on the starboard hull. So today, my task is to climb in there and see what we have. There's my cave of treasures. Let's see what we can find. Ah, look how big it is in there. Still can't get over it. It's just wild to me that this locker is so big. I'm literally standing inside right now with so much headroom. That's so much storage in this boat. Back to the task at hand. Right away, I can see we already have some really good options here for mooring lines. So let's just get these pulled out and see what they look like. I'm gonna need my gloves on for this part. I do feel invincible when I have my gloves on. I feel like I can clean anything in this entire boat. Get her out of here! try that again. Not too shabby of a lineup here. We can definitely use this red line. We'll just chop her up into a couple pieces. We'll keep this. It's a pretty thick 3-strand, but yeah, we'll keep it. We can use this black line. We'll keep this guy, and we'll keep this blue line. So yeah, I think we made out pretty good. Then there's the Big Bertha here. It's stiff and brittle in quite a few places, so we're just gonna get rid of that one. And this is my favorite part about being at the yard. Heads up!
Let's do a quick little update on the board here, because now we have a working toilet and Ava found all those lines. We've shortened some of them so they are suitable for mooring lines. Today I get to do something I've been looking forward to a little bit, and that is our basic NMEA 2000 network. We need to get that configured and up and running. And also I want to install our depth sounder, because that is also an NMEA 2000 device. And I almost forgot that the NMEA 2000 network also will require me to finish the exhaust on our engines, because I need to install our exhaust temperature alarms, because those are also on the NMEA 2000 network. Our NMEA 2000 network, even just the temporary one here on the catamaran, is maybe going to be a little bit more complicated than just a straight basic one, because some of our components here will need configuration. If you have a super basic NMEA 2000 network, well, you don't really need to configure much of anything. There is nothing complicated about NMEA 2000. It's just a data bus, essentially a bunch of wires. There is a great little example of it here on this starter kit. You have the bus, which is just a bunch of these cables and different connecting doodads. Then you have power supply to that bus. You have, for instance, a chart plotter and some NMEA 2000 devices. That could be a depth sounder or a temperature sensor, anything you can think of. There are a bunch of manufacturers that make cables for NMEA 2000 networks and various connection doodads. These ones happen to be from Garmin, but all manufacturers seem to have some kind of starter kit that gives you kind of the basics to get started. Some connectors, a bit of cables, some termination connectors for each end of your bus, and a way to supply power. I already cracked open our starter kit last week when I installed our very basic DC system and connected the little yellow cable to a DC converter just to make sure the NMEA 2000 network has a nice steady 12-volt power supply. Of course, what makes an NMEA 2000 network fun to have is all the things you can connect to it. Here are a few examples, like our depth, speed, and temperature triducer here. That's going to go in the hull in a little bit. These are TMP 100s. These are temperature modules. We'll have one in each hull. These give us the option of connecting a bunch of temperature sensor probey thingies, so we can monitor, for instance, our exhaust gas temperature and also just the temperature in the engine compartment or the fridge or anything we like. For now, we're going to keep it nice and simple. We have one of these exhaust gas temperature probes for each of the engines, and then also one of these ambient air temperature probes for each of the engine compartments. I rummaged through my old project bin aboard Athena and I found a couple of other little devices here. This is another thermometer, and we have a humidity sensor. All of that stuff will give us a bunch of data on the network, but that's not much fun if we can't see it. Of course, we're going to have a connection to our chart plotter, and then in the project bin aboard Athena, I also found our spare Garmin GMI 20 display here, and we'll also have this guy. This is a Signal K gateway. This will take the data from the NMEA 2000 network and put it out on basically just something that's easier to consume and a bit of a standard for web stuff and apps. Is all of this stuff required for us to get the boat to North Carolina? Definitely not, but it will be nice to have a working depth sounder for the ICW because a lot of it is really shallow, and also it'll be really nice to monitor exhaust gas temperature on the engines because we haven't run them for that long, and if we start having some kind of an issue, I want as early of a warning as I can get. To get the party started, I decided to install our depth sounder. After having double-checked the manual to make sure we had all the needed O-rings, I climbed into the forward compartment. On the sole, there is a little access hatch. That little hatch is how you access the depth sounder. I really hope this thing never starts leaking because it's not really super easy to get to. With the fancy triducer installed and the brain box mounted on the side of the hull, Ava gave me a hand running the NMEA 2000 cable all the way out into the forward compartment. Next up, I wanted to install the exhaust gas sensors. These are designed to be installed in a manifold, which is what I'm planning on doing long term, but for the short trip up to North Carolina, we'll just install them directly in the hose. I am in no way recommending you do the same. The brain boxes that'll read the temperature and transform it into NMEA 2000 data is made by Meritron and they're called TMP100s. It has room for 6 sensors. With one of these in each hull, we should be able to monitor anything we want.
These are the doohickeys that will make up our network. I think all manufacturers have stuff similar to this. So there's these single connector thingies here that you can attach to each other to form longer ones. Or if you're running a little short of space, you can also get one of these with like 4 drops on there. And those you can also connect together. One little thing to remember is that at each end of the network there has to be one of these termination resistor doodads here. This one is going to go here, and as you can see I've already have the other one in place over here. In my particular instance here, we're going to connect the depth sounder here, we're going to have a tank level sender here, then there's going to be a 6-meter cable that goes to this guy. This is going to be located up at the helm station, so we can have chart plotter, GMI 20 display, the signal K gateway, and some other things we'll get back to in an upcoming video. From here, we'll have a 10-meter cable that's going to connect to this guy that's going to be connected to the TMP100 in the port hull. And then there's going to be a 4 or 6-meter cable connecting to this guy, where we're going to have the tank level sender in the port hull and the depth sounder in the port hull.
With all of the cables in place and everything connected, it was time to bust out the NMEA 2000 USB gateway and the good old confuser. Meritron makes this great piece of software called NK2 Analyzer. That is what is used to configure their devices, and it'll also check your network for any issues. To do the calibration of the tank level senders accurately, we'll need some fuel to fill the tanks. But I ran into some issues running the software inside of a virtual machine on my Mac, where I'd randomly just lose connection and not be able to reconnect without restarting. But at least, as you can see here, the network seems to be working. With that little setback on the NMEA 2000 task, we can't really close that task yet, but I've ordered a cheap refurbished Windows laptop so we can finish the configuration of that next week. But there are some other tasks we can close. Captain Dum-Dum accidentally poured the cold weather oil into our engines instead of the blistering hot weather oil. So I've swapped out the oil in both engines with the correct stuff and also in the gearboxes. I've also checked the port engine. The starter there looked a little bit wonky. It appears to be okay. We've ordered a spare starter just to have on the boat in case we have an issue. I have secured both of our starter batteries and also the windlass battery. I have checked all of the nuts and bolts on the engines just to make sure everything is nice and tight. I've also closed all of our through hulls and zip tied the ones shut that we don't need to open. I have installed the engine exhausts. We've also installed the temperature sensors and of course the depth sounder. As I had hoped, we were able to close a big chunk of the tasks here up on the board. The ones that are still here are fairly quick, smaller tasks, and that is fortunate. Because we are starting to firm up plans for how to get this hunk of fiberglass back in the water. It's going to involve the owner of the yard here getting it out of here and then to somewhere where we can have a crane lift it into the water. The crane guy is all set. He said he has time, not this coming week, but the week after. And yeah, then we just got to see if we can get the owner of the yard ready too. So yeah, with a little bit of luck, we should be able to splash in about a week and a half. So we are fairly close to having the boat ready to go back in the water. But there's also a bunch of tidying up we need to do. So yeah, there is a lot of stuff on our to-do list for next week too. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this week's video. We hope to see all you guys back here aboard the catamaran next week for yet more glorious getting ready. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video,
please remember to leave a like.
See you. And again, she made me do it. And of course, thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring this week's video.